dublab.
Welcome to the Quarantine Tapes, a daily podcast from Onassis, LA and dublab. Hosted by Paul Holdengräber, this series chronicles shifting paradigms in the era of social distancing.
Hello?
Hello, could I please speak with Lynell George?
This is Lynell.
Lynell, it's a pleasure to hear your voice finally. I love a conversation that begins with a laugh.
Well, likewise, I've been looking forward to connecting with you as well.
So have I, and I'm delighted that you're part of the quarantine tapes. Where does my call reach you, and what have you been doing during these quarantine times?
I am at home right now, sitting in front of a pile of paper and pencils and pens because I'm going to be writing letters to people. That's one of the things I'm using this quarantine time to do.
Letters as in old-fashioned letters.
Exactly. Old-fashioned letters on beautiful paper with beautiful fountain pens, with beautiful colored ink.
I can't believe it. About 2 days ago, Lynell, what I did was find my old Waterman fountain pen to begin writing letters by hand again. I feel like it's something that we have forgotten to do. The same way we used to, until very recently, not call each other. The phone had become this tremendously exotic way of communication, and now
precisely
isn't it? I mean, this is just for our listeners now. A brief moment of Lynell and Paul speaking about a certain form of nostalgia.
So I've been actually talking to friends from all over the country and world in the last few weeks, because there is something about the voice, the texture of a voice, and being able to hear a laugh or a sigh or even just swimming around in a pause.
Such as now. The grain of the voice. There's something about the grain of the voice, the handwriting, and all of this, just at the moment when this current administration doesn't want to help the post office.
Exactly. And that was part of the motivation too, is that I thought, I have these stamps, and they're these beautiful new stamps that are going to be released soon, and why don't I do my part? And so I actually took a picture of one of the envelopes and a pen and put it on 2 of my social media feeds to encourage people, just to say that I was doing it, and now other people are going to do it. So this is great. We can just, because this is, we need to save the USPS, and, I just think about all the essential things that have arrived here since I have been home. People have mailed me masks. People have mailed me books to read for possible reviews. I do that sometimes, of course.
Beautiful. What are the beautiful stamps you have?
I have. Let's see. You can hear me rattling.
I love it.
Let's see. I have the National Museum of African American History and Culture, Smithsonian Museum. I've got John Lennon. I've got Ellsworth Kelly. Beautiful. Let's see. I have the murals at the post office. Marvin Gaye. And let's see what else is in Modern Art in America. These are just the ones that I pulled out.
Just to end a little on a little note about the post office and letters. I'm a huge fan of the post office, and unlike many people, I love going to the post office. I love the fact that it's one form of communication that unless it becomes less and less possible to maintain it, has not changed. It's
No.
And we trust a piece of paper on another piece of paper to travel thousands of miles around the globe. I've always been amazed by that. And
It's true.
there's a poetry to the post. There's something extraordinary about opening a letter and also waiting to answer. Unlike texts and all of those kinds of forms, you're given time to answer, and therefore you're given time to ponder, and therefore you're given time to actually think what you want to say.
It's very true. And I'm gonna respond to this in two parts. One, I can walk to my
your two parts. Two
parts. Number one, the post office. I so agree with you about going there. Like, it doesn't bother me as it does other people. I don't mind standing in the line. I can walk to my post office, which is lovely. My post office is named after Jackie Robinson, who grew up in the area I live in. And so sometimes when if you can get a stamp, it will say, Jackie Robinson Station. If I ask them to hand stamp it that way, it will say that. And I love that. The other thing is, I've been in there where I've been in line, and my own post person is in line behind me. Like, wait, you have to stand in line like everybody else? He said, yes, we do. He was taking care of his own mail. But we chatted, and he just takes such good care of me. It's like he's a friend, and he brings things that are really important to me. And I was away for a while, and I had asked a neighbor to pick up my mail, and he had forgotten. And so he told me, he said, I just went ahead and held it back for you. So there are friendships that have developed over the years with that as well.
Beautiful about it. Just a couple of weeks ago, you published an essay in High Country News on March 27, 2020, called Safe at Home in Los Angeles. I love that essay. And
thank you so much.
So wonderful. It is so wonderful. It's a love letter to Los Angeles in a way that is so beautiful, that makes one realize, people don't make sense and cities don't make sense. And
right.
and you write this, and I'd like you to unpack it, Lynell. You write about your weekly walk in Griffiths Park. You say, always I hold out hope that the park will be quiet and unpopulated enough to allow me to simply concentrate not on beauty, but on incongruity. I love that. I love that.
Thank you.
And I want you to particularly concentrate on incongruity.
I think I'm a native, and I think I'm always, when I can slow down enough, I'm always fascinated with how the city grew up out of this hard ground, and what was around it. And I think a lot about what seems impossible is made possible here, and how people have come together in ways that they would not have been able to come together in other places. Even though, we live in sprawl, and when I was younger, you could reach everywhere in 20 to 30 minutes, and now it can be an hour and a half or more. So what used to separate us was sprawl, and now what separates us is, or has been, traffic, and people staying in their own little spots. But even still, people who you would think would not come together, or the cuisine, or the architecture, all these unexpected, serendipitous fusions happen here in language, and again, food, and art. And so I think a lot about that when I'm moving around the city, and it is like the flower that comes out of concrete. There's a stubborn aspect about LA that I I really admire. And even when I get frustrated with how difficult it can be, it surprises me. Like I, be really upset about how hard or difficult a commute is, for example, or how you know just just somebody being sort of just unfeeling and uncaring. It's hard for us to be swimming in this place right now. But then there's this kindness or beauty or
beauty,
the gentle scent.
But beauty in
nature.
Beauty in incongruity. You say not
exactly.
on beauty, but on incongruity.
No, exactly.
And in a way, one can add to it beauty in incongruity. There's something about, the dissonance. And when I read that word incongruity, it reminded me of a wonderful short poem of Carlos Williams, where he says, dissonance, if you are interested, leads to discovery.
Yeah. Yes. It's throwing something unexpected your way. It's like there are no wrong notes. And that's the way I feel about the city when everyone says, Los Angeles is not a real city. I'm like, it is. It's its own city. And it's its own definition of that. So it may feel discordant or like a mistake in certain ways, but that's what I really love about it.
And this old battle between Los Angeles and New York reminds me so much of a French teacher I had when I was growing up, insofar that I did in Europe, in Belgium. This teacher who would say, "Ça ne souffre pas de comparaison." It doesn't suffer comparison. These cities are incongruous to each other, but not in the way that you expressed it. There is something extraordinary, a kind of the folly of contiguity of this city. What is next to, when you see one building next to another, it makes no sense.
Especially in architecture. Yes, exactly.
Yes, especially in architecture. But what happens to this incongruity when everything suddenly seems incongruous, as in this moment of the quarantine?
I just finished a piece Monday, trying to work through what will LA be, after this. And I really was thinking, I'm not clairvoyant, not so I'm not sure, but there are things that I realize that it's going to take time for things to come back up. And that is going back to the one moment I mentioned about there's something about that mixing. And again, the language is what we're adjacent to. And I think that's what I love about this place is you can wander the world and never leave Los Angeles. You can hear so many different languages and, dance, so many different dances from all over the world and, be in a neighborhood that has signage that has no English in it. And you feel like you've traveled so many other places in one day. What I'm concerned about as we reopen the city, that's going to be, we're not going to be able to move through it the way we're used to. And it's going to take time and it's going to take patience to be able to reclaim, I think, all of the things that we consider to be part of what it is to be an Angelino. But I am optimistic that, we will turn it into something. We will look at this moment and this adversity and turn it into something beautiful too.
I love your desire to discover LA as if through fresh eyes, as if for the first time. A desire, obviously, that is not afforded to you because you've been here forever, for your lifetime. The approach of a new city when we arrive for the first time. On day 2, it no longer has that magic or that appeal. Or if you don't like the place, the dislike is no longer the same. Yet in this moment of this quarantine, it may be the case, as we mentioned with your walks in Griffiths Park, where you hope it won't be overpopulated, where you hope it will be empty. In a way, this quarantine affords you a glimpse, as it were, of LA as it might have been, but isn't. I'm wondering if what I'm saying to you here speaks to you.
Wow. Okay. So here's the silence as I think.
I love it.
I think, yes, there's a bit of, I guess, reclamation that's going on where, I went out right after the order. I thought, and when the stay-at-home order was passed by the mayor, because I was reporting a story, I wanted to see, okay, what does an emptied out Los Angeles look like now this way? And I decided to roll in my essential errands and go to my old neighborhood, which is Echo Park, and roll through Echo Park. And there was that, it was shocking to see how empty. Like, I could have walked down the center of Sunset Boulevard, same with downtown. In fact, I did get out of my car, parked it, and stood in the middle of Broadway, downtown, and just marveled at, it really was like a light switch. The city could be turned off like that. And what does that mean? And how do you come back from that very sudden flick of a switch? What happens to us when the switch is, flicked off? And I found then after that, I went home, I finished my piece, but I found that my language hadn't caught up with the emotions I was feeling. And I realized I need to stay turned off for a little while. I don't mean like, maybe a dimmer switch is probably more accurate. Maybe it just needed to be quiet. But I really found that I too, like the city, need to be quiet now.
I love the notion of the language not having caught up. Your next book, as I understand it, will be a book about Octavia Butler. And yes, and you say everyone now says she was so prescient. She was simply paying attention. And then she just extrapolated, and it made me, of course, think of the so well-known and rehearsed line of Arthur Miller, "Attention must be paid."
Right. Yes, attention must be paid. And I was thinking about her, in the Willy Loman way, in that, she was always swimming against the current, just her interest and her fascination. And by chance, the last event I went to in public where I saw many friends and we hugged and exchanged kisses, and was the folk opera that Toshi Reagan just presented at UCLA.
Yes, I went to hear her talk at the Underground Museum, which was fantastic. And she sang. Oh my God! And she sang. Anyway, I'm interrupting you. Please continue. Please,
no. But it was right. Well, this is what the performance was. It was call and response. She wanted, the audience to participate and to go back and forth with her. And I thought that there's some meaning in this too, that Butler was the last community event. That story, Parable of the Sower, which is about a dystopian LA, was the last thing for me to sit and take in a community of people. It's sometimes I think, things don't happen by chance,
serendipity, but not really.
Serendipity again. Exactly. But, I have another writer friend the other day, she texted me, she was in Pasadena, standing in line to go to the market. And she said, I've been thinking about you because I'm standing in this social distance line. All of us have masks on. And I've been thinking about you and Octavia Butler.
How extraordinary.
Yeah.
Now, you spent so much time, as I understand it, in the archives at the Huntington Library with over 300 boxes of material of Octavia Butler, who in a sense you interviewed a writer as if dead. I remember when Richard Rodriguez in my past incarnation in Los Angeles at LACMA, the Institute for Art and Cultures, which I created there many years ago, interviewed himself.
Wow.
So an altered ego, his alter ego and his altered ego in some sense. So where
I'd love to read that.
Yeah, where did you begin?
Oh, such a great question. I first was just overwhelmed when I got there. I just where do you start? And I kept thinking, I need to start with the most personal, intimate voice. I didn't want the short stories. I didn't want anything formal, so no speeches, not even letters. I wanted something, so I went to the journals first and the diaries, because I wanted to see what she sounded like in her most unguarded moments, when she was very happy or very sad. I wanted to hear that voice, what that voice sounded like, the rawness of it. And then, and I wanted to see what was consistently on her mind. And a lot of it was, she was always asking questions. And then I realized, as I was moving through, I started looking at marginalia. And the marginalia was telling me another story, so I could see what was going on in the day-to-day of her life, in her journals, and the things that would snag her. But I also, in the marginalia, I was saying, I have to go to the market, to go buy food. I've got to buy a new typewriter ribbon. But then she would be asking questions about science, and or about anthropology, asking herself questions, things she needed to go and research. And that's when it hit me, and it took about 3 or 4 weeks of looking and realizing she should interview herself. I don't want to do anything, that's going to make it seem, I didn't want to trivialize it, and I didn't want to insert myself, but I thought, she's asking questions every day about something, in the larger world or her personal world. Let her ask the questions and answer it. And so that's what I started to do. I looked especially at the marginalia.
It's so beautiful. It reminds me again of another line of Arthur Miller, where he says, it is rare for people to be asked the question which puts them squarely in front of themselves, which is precisely what it seems you did with Octavia Butler. And I'm, another one of your, might one call them heroes. I don't like the word particularly. It's Toni Morrison, where you write in this beautiful essay in the LA Times. You write, for as long as I can remember, the publication of a new Toni Morrison book was like a visit by a dignitary, but a figure who was always family. Room was made, time was cleared to sit with her. She always arrived with the stories we needed to hear when we most required them. If you sat with her now in the way you sat with Octavia Butler, what would you ask her? How would you interview her?
Oh boy, that's a hard one. I was always so impressed. My mother was the Morrison fan, and she's the one that pulled me in to her work. And I realized it was like, for my mom, it was a mirror. And I actually have copies of all of my mother's first edition hardcover Toni Morrison books with all of her notes in them.
Wow.
And in a way, what I think I would want to do is take my mother's notes and construct a series of questions to ask her from my mother.
Beautiful. You know, Terry Tempest Williams did that with her mother when, do you know her work? So wonderful.
Yes.
What a beautiful idea. I hope my question has inspired you for, if not your next book,
and
maybe maybe at some point.
Thank you for asking that. I hadn't even thought about it that way. Like, I'm holding on to these things for a reason. So, and you put the question in front of me.
You've written liner notes for music to Otis Redding. You won a prize for it. Aretha Franklin, Nat King Cole. During this period, in closing, what music are you listening to during this quarantine?
Wow, another really good question.
I'm sorry.
First, back to the theme of quiet. I was listening to no music at all. Music, and I guess it's because my mother is a musician. Then came out here from New Orleans to be to study, but then decided to pursue teaching. My brother is a musician, so music was a huge part of my growing up. So I listen to it, and it takes up a lot of space in my head. I have to really focus. So part of it, I think, what was happening with the trauma is that I couldn't listen. It was just couldn't get in.
Too much.
So a lot of quiet, and then suddenly, I think trying to think of the first thing I put on. Oh wow, I'm trying to remember because I did start listening, and I may have to. When Hal Willner died last week, the music producer who did all of these beautiful compilations, who really did train my ear in ways and took me down paths I hadn't gone down. There's the first album of his I had was That's the Way I Feel Now, the Thelonious Monk album, that tribute to Thelonious Monk, with this amazing cross section of musicians, from Carla Bley and Steve Swallow to Donald Fagen and Peter Frampton. It was this fascinating compilation. So that was probably the first dip in. I went back and started listening to Willner, and then also picked up the Kurt Weill album and was listening to Lou Reed. And I think that just started to open me up again to, pulling out vinyl, listening to jazz, Charles Mingus, more Monk, and I'm trying to think what else is my comfort food this week. I haven't listened to much this week, but it's been in dribs and drabs.
It's wonderful for you to bring up Hal Willner. I had occasion to evoke him and John Prine with Roseanne Cash just very recently. Lynell, can I thank you enough? Well, yes, I thank you again and again, and I can't wait to meet you in person, and I can't wait if you will allow me to take a walk with you in Griffiths Park. I would love it. Some very early morning. I send you a very big virtual hug.
Oh, thank you. I send one right back to you. I look forward to our walk and being able to stand above the city and take a look, just take it all in.
In all its incongruity. Thank you so much.
In all its incongruity. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
To support this show and Dublab's progressive programming, go to dublab.com/support